Welcome back, everyone. In today's episode, we are diving into the world of test doubles, a powerful technique for enhancing your unit test. Test doubles are essential tools in the realm of unit testing. They help isolate code under test and enable more thorough and effective testing. Let's explore how test doubles can supercharge your unit testing efforts. Test doubles, also known as mocks, stubs, spies, and fakes, are objects that replace dependencies of code under test. Let's delve into each type. We will demonstrate how to use test doubles in your unit test, whether you are testing classes with dependencies, dealing with external APIs, or handling complex interfaces. Test doubles provide a way to simulate behavior and control the environment. Test doubles are indispensable tools for writing robust and reliable unit tests. By mastering the art of test doubles, you can level up your unit testing game and build better software with confidence. Test doubles are not just theoretical concepts, they have real world application in the software development. We will discuss common scenarios where each type of test doubles is invaluable and demonstrate how they solve real world testing challenges. So, the first test double is mock. Mocks are objects pre-programmed with expectations. They simulate the behavior of real objects and allow you to verify interactions between your code and its dependencies. For example, suppose you have a user service class that depends on a user repository interface. You can use a mock object to simulate the behavior of the repository and verify that the user service calls the appropriate method. Let's have a look at it in a real project. For example, here we have a user service class. This user service depends on our user repository interface. If we want to test the user service, we need to mark the iRepository interface, and then we can simulate the behavior of it. We will later on talk about mock framework and how we can use it, but here our focus is on test doubles and their definition and how we can use them and which one is the best choice for our situation and our scenarios. So we have talked about mocks and we took a look at a real example how we can use mocks. The next test double which I'm gonna talk about is stubs. Stubs provide canned answers to call made during the test. They are used to indirectly pass data to the code under test and simulate specific condition. For example, imagine testing a calculator class that relies on a tax calculator interface to calculate taxes. You can use a stub to provide predefined tax amount for different scenario, such as different income levels. So let's take a look. For example, there is a tax calculator interface and with its method which is calculate taxes, and we have an implementation for this interface. If we wanna test this method and this interface, so we need to use stop in this scenario. The process is we use first we mark it and then we set up it. Here I'm using mock framework, and as I said, we will talk about the feature of a mock framework later on, but let's focus on definition and the whole thing about it right now and in this video. So here I'm using setup and I will mark it with this specific value, which if it gets like 1000, it should return 100. And with this setup, I mark this interface, and then at the end I can verify that the result with the same value. So the next test double is Spies. Spies are similar to mocks but record information about method calls rather than setting expectation upfront. They allow you to observe the behavior of the code under test. For example, let's say you are testing a logger class that uses an external logging server. By using a spy, you can observe the calls made to the logging server and ensure that the logger class behaves as expected. Let's check it in our example. For example, here we have a logger class. This logger class is depend on iLogger. And within this method, we are calling logger.log. This log has a method within iLogger. So let's have a look how we can test this class and its functionality. First of all, we need to mark logger, and then we create the logger service after act method, and then within the assert, instead of like checking a value, checking a result, we verify that whenever we call log error, log error should be called and used within this method with this input. And also we can check the number of calls that this method is using within this functionality. For example, sometimes whenever this log error calls, you should check that, for example, log error is calling one times, is calling two times. There are also some other functionality, never once. Based on scenario, you could use this functionality. So that's how Spice help us to enhance our test and our test cases and our implementation. And the last one is fakes. Fakes are simplified implementation of dependencies used for testing. They provide a lightweight alternative to real dependencies, making tests faster and more deterministic. For example, suppose your application interface with a database. Instead of using a real database connection for testing, you can create a fake database implementation that stores data in memory. This allows your test to run faster and without external dependency. So here in our example, we have a service. This service is injecting an iDatabase interface. So if you want to test this, if you want to write unit tests for this service and test its functionality, somehow we need to mark and create this iDatabase. So sometimes creating a database and mark it is like complicated and sophisticated way. So instead of it, we could use a fake. So that's a test implementation to our test. Here we are using a fake database. So if you look at the iDatabase interface, we have an implementation. That's the real implementation for it. And that's the fake implementation for our iDatabase interface. So we are using some fake database, some example to create the functionality of this database. For example, for the save method, I'm using the this implementation, and for get all database, I'll return all of the data. So that's like an in-memory database. So in this way, I replace the whole database functionality with my fake functionality, which is very easy to use it. So back to our unit test implementation. So as we talked about it, here we use the fake implementation for our database. We use a fake class. Here we have a data, and here, like other unit tests, we create our exact like class which is under test, and I'm using this data as an input and use it in the act part, and in the answer part for the return I'm just using the fake database class and check it that these databases and these data are the same. That was a quick introduction about test doubles. Have question about test doubles? Now's your chance to ask. Drop your question in the comment and we will address them in a QA session and I'll reply all of your questions. If you are enjoying our unit test series, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We have more exciting content coming your way. Happy coding!